Wonderful. Well, thank you. Thank you for the introduction. My name is Brian Benjamin. I'll give a sort of a quick little context around sort of why I'm here. So I lead executive education at Ivey Business School. So I am based in Toronto, and we've been around Canada for a little over 100 years as a business school. But we've operated a campus here in Hong Kong for almost 30 years now. And outside of Canada, we've got our largest alumni base in this part of the world. So it's a really exciting opportunity to be able to participate in a geography in a region that is so important to us. I've been blown away by just the energy in the room and the conversations so far. So we're going to dive right in. We're going to bring a lot of energy and hopefully a lot of insights, and I'll give you an opportunity to ask some questions. So as opposed to me saying in the last 5 minutes, does anyone have any questions, and you drastically kind of think about it and no one says anything, think about your questions as our speakers are going, and we'll hopefully get a chance to get a few questions underway. I've learned a few tips from our panelists so far and our moderators. So there's the clock. I will pay attention to the clock. Thank you for that one. And I do got to commend CanCham for lining up our panelists under their names. It's a personal pet peeve whenever I see a panel and people are sitting under the wrong name and the wrong profile. It gets very confusing. So let's dive right in. I'm not going to do introductions because I will not do justice. We've got a phenomenal group of senior executives from leading organizations that I think are going to provide some really helpful context and perspective on the conversations. A couple of words that I wrote down from our panels so far: leadership, transformation, opportunity, and investment. And thank you to everyone who's gone before for talking about the importance of leadership in terms of being able to move our organizations forward and to realize some of the things that we are seeing sort of in front of us now as the opportunities in this part of the world. We're going to do a little bit of a deeper dive on the topic of leadership. So let's hear from each of our panelists. I'm going to start very easy on my immediate left here with Carrie from Manulife. As you notice, the titles are actually all very similar. So we have Chief Operating Officer, Chief Corporate Officer, Group Chief Operating Officer, and Chief Operating Officer. So, I told myself there's no way I'm going to do justice to any of these titles, but we've got C-level executives, which is really the storyline here. So maybe you can answer this question and give a brief sort of introduction to your role and the perspective that you're going to bring. Is how is the business landscape here changing in Hong Kong? We're going to dig into the biggest opportunities and the biggest risks, but let's focus on kind of what you're most excited about as you see the business landscape shifting. So Carrie, over to you.
Thanks, Brian. So maybe let me quickly introduce what I do. So as the COO for Manulife Hong Kong and Macau, I lead a team that really powers the entire customer journey from front to end. And that means leading the team that looks after from underwriting to claims to cross-border servicing online and offline, as well as developing future capabilities and making sure that our people are ready for the transformation that's coming ahead. And so in a nutshell, every day what I really think about is how do we make our business easier, better, and faster for the 2.5 million customers that we serve today. And really, I think a couple of things that are on my priority list right now in terms of opportunities and risk. Certainly, we're seeing longevity. Hong Kong has one of the longest in terms of life expectancy in the world. Women, right, the life expectancy age is on average average 88.4 years, with men at 82.8 years. And certainly that means that there is more pressure on healthcare demands. But that also means that there is a rise in the silver economy and a resurgence in terms of demand for healthcare and wealth solutions. So it is really up to insurance companies like Manulife to be able to offer innovative solutions that are integrated across wealth, health, and retirement. And secondly, we're also seeing cross-mobility, cross-border activities. There's a huge surge in demand for insurance and wealth products in Hong Kong. And that means that as a company, we need to ensure that we continue to provide the right solutions with stable returns for our customers. And at the same time, we're also seeing that in Hong Kong, there's a lot of Hong Kong residents that are moving or retiring to go to China. In fact, there are more than 88,000 Hong Kong residents that are now residing in Guangdong alone. So ensuring that we continue to provide the right care and continuous coverage and protection for them is actually one of the most forefront priority that we have, and to ensure that we continue to provide that sustainability for this society.
So lots of things to look forward to, and lots of opportunity, and building on Manulife's incredible track record so far. We look forward to seeing where we go next. So, Jacqueline, it's great to have you on the panel. I enjoyed our conversation leading up to the panel. There's a lot of excitement in your world these days. So maybe a brief introduction and what you're looking forward to and seeing.
Hi,
as the
everyone. So I'm the Chief Corporate Officer at Hong Kong Land, and in this role, I cover a number of important corporate functions: technology, sustainability, corporate communications and brand, as well as a newly established team called the Strategic Placemaking Team. And I guess you asked about sort of the changing business landscape here in Hong Kong, and I'd say that I'd call out a couple of shifts. The first is the notion of moving from space to experience. And so what do I mean by that? Hong Kong Land is a major landlord here in Central. And what we've seen here in Central is there's been a real flight to quality. Businesses, financial institutions, i.e. tenants, but as well as the talent that are part of these organizations, they have become much more discerning about what they want in terms of space, and it's no longer just about space, it's about premium integrated experiences. It's not just an address, right? And so, what we have here is a huge opportunity, which is to actually bring to life much more of what Hong Kong has to offer. It's not just, it will always be a super connector, but it's so much more than that, right? And I think it's a real opportunity for businesses, public and private sector, to bring sort of the commerce, not just the commerce, but also culture and community together to create the experience that's unique to Hong Kong.
I love it. Taking connection to a whole new level around the experience, and I see it just walking around the city, and it's great to see all this new innovation and progress. Terrence, great to have you on our panel. Terrence Chow, COO Raffles Family Office, maybe a brief introduction and kind of what you're seeing.
Sure. Thank you, Brian, and good afternoon, everybody. Hopefully nobody's hungry, because I can go on for a very long time not eating. So I'm Group COO at Raffles Family Office. I've been in this role now for coming up on 2 years. Prior to that, I ran a bank. It's a big bank, it's a Canadian bank, it's blue. You guys can connect the dots. And I think I'm still transitioning from being a corporate leader to a leader within a much more entrepreneurial type of environment, and I draw from the panel that was just on stage. I think this particular type of business means that, yes, there's a day job, which is the role, and very similar to my fellow colleagues, a lot of the operational technology, risk management functions fall under me by job description, but because I work for an entrepreneur, that's probably 1/3 of my job. 2/3 of my job is actually building the business, out there marketing the brand, attracting talent, working with clients, and expanding and pushing the boundaries. So there is no such thing as okay, that's your job and go do it, right? Like certainly not anymore. In terms of opportunity within the wealth space, just a couple of data points, right? The ultra high net worth and the high net worth client segment in Asia is becoming increasingly more sophisticated, increasingly more mature. In Asia, we're probably at the second or third generation of wealth, maybe the fourth, right, for the most longest tenured ones. Versus in the West, in Europe, and in the Americas, we're talking 10 generations and beyond. And so with that comes an increasingly larger demand on much more global solutions, much more sophisticated solutions, much more complex solutions as well. And so the data I'll leave you with is this: the independent wealth management space, so multifamily offices, external asset managers, or just single family offices, that accounts for about 5% of total wealth managed in Asia. Versus in the West, again, Europe and in the Americas, it's somewhere between 30 to 50%. And that tracks, right? Because as you're getting into the 10th generation and beyond, the families are going to be naturally global in its footprint. The considerations, whether that's regulatory or tax, is going to be much more multi-jurisdictional and complex. And so the opportunity for a shop like Raffles Family Office is to take that 5% market share and obviously grow it at a much more rapid pace so that it starts to catch up with our counterparts in the West as well. And this particular subsector, if you will, is about 10, 15 years old in Asia. It's not to get to 5%, it's not going to take another 10, 15 years to get to 20 or 30, right? It's going to be much more accelerated. And so then how do I, in my job, my day job, create a properly sustainable, scalable platform, and then obviously drive the business forward and grow it, et cetera. Yeah.
Wonderful, thank you. Last and definitely not least, I'm worried that your title might be out of date based on what we were talking about backstage in terms of your expanded scope. But Trevor, great to have you on our panel. Brief introduction and kind of what you're seeing here in the business landscape.
Marsh is the biggest risk advisory for the insurance brokerage industry around the world. So my job kind of similar to my colleague just explained, like kind of overseeing like a big team managing technology, operations, digital data, like you name that, like we have been like kind of mentioned about it earlier. I think the interesting part that like we see, I think like I try to kind of sum up a little bit like amount of say is as we see the evolvement or evolutions of the technology as well as the changings of the market dynamic, I really see that like how to create, as a colleague just mentioned, that's the scalable capability to help to facilitate finding the right opportunity in the marketplace is extremely difficult and extremely important, because I think over the years we always think about how we can find the business here and there, but it's never really think about how we are able to provide enough capability to serve in the right way. So I think it's how we can create that platform and able to bring in the transformation idea in order to make it sustainable and create the competitive advantages of the company. So I think that's kind of like the opportunity that like we can create. And also, as we have been seeing a lot of clients in our organization or our firm, is like they are looking outside. How can we partner with our client to explore the opportunity as they leave their home country and find the opportunity away from the region? I think that's very exciting opportunity for us as well.
Amazing, thank you. The other tip I realized is you do turn your back to this side of the room, so hello over here. I'm going to go to you first for questions at the end, so fair warning. I'll turn back here. You almost sort of smile when I say, in times of constant disruption, like, does a day go by, does an hour go by, does a minute go by where someone isn't saying, we live in a time of unprecedented change and disruption? It's like, yes, we do. And we're all sort of dealt with the same hands of cards. And I think it's an opportunity for the organizations who are going to stand out to figure out how are they going to play those hands of cards, whether it's been 200 years, whether it's been 200 days. And we've heard from organizations that are just starting up, and we've heard from organizations that have not just decades, but centuries of sort of experience and a track record that they're building on. So what capabilities separate organizations that truly thrive from those that are not thriving? And the risk is, if we're not thriving, we're kind of going in the other direction. So I'm going to actually open this up, and whoever is quickest on the buzzer can give the answer first, and we can sort of see if a few different perspectives want to emerge. So who wants to dive in first here? And we've got 3 Ivy alumni here on our panel, so you've all been cold called on in class, and I have no trouble doing that here on stage.
All right,
but who wants to go first?
All right.
Terrence, all right.
Fine. We would have heard a lot about technology, and I'm sure we'll continue to hear a lot more. AI obviously is something that gets talked about. I'm going to go in a slightly different direction. I'm going to say the winners on the back of all tech disruption and everything else will be the ones who actually find a way to harness kind of the old school softer skills, right? The communication skills, the leadership skills, the listening, right? In my line of business, technology can certainly do an asset allocation model potentially better than any portfolio manager in the past or present. It can rebalance that portfolio. It can take into consideration data points 24/7 around the world. It can even analyze sentiment based on what POTUS might be tweeting. So it can do all that, right? But what it won't be doing, at least not yet, is being able to sense the tension in the shoulders between grandma and grandpa in a meeting when we're talking about legacy and wealth transfer. It's not going to be able to really recognize that, you know what, maybe the daughter and the father isn't quite getting along, and maybe the son doesn't really want to take over the family business. And that requires a lot more empathy and a lot more of those human soft skills to really unpack and get underneath, and so to truly understand kind of what's going on within the family dynamic. And without that, all the tech in the world is not going to make much of a difference. And so I would say just another kind of focus on making sure we're bringing in those types of softer skills and celebrating it, so that the tech can be obviously deployed to optimize everything that we do, but we still can't lose sight of those softer skills.
I love it. Human skills live on. And, you know, that's a testament for universities. And there's a few of us in the room here as we're preparing people to enter the workforce. Where do we need to double down on in terms of making sure that we're getting people who are ready to add value in a maximum way? Who else is going to dive in on this one?
Maybe I follow the I3 traditions to jump on the feedback. I think, like, absolutely. I just along the line, I really think is on the human side, is like how to get the organizations to have the right mindset. I think everyone talk about mindset. Like, what's the mindset that like we need the organization? Is the culture to believe in changes. I think we talk a lot about changes, but and I think many people here has been running organizations and doing a lot of changes in the organization. I always find it extremely difficult to move along because, be frank, nobody wants to change. Right, that's facts, right? But like, how can we get from the top to agree this is the change, this is the pace, get the, I would say, the small win, having the right winning mentality, and to move on and continue to drive in order to gather enough momentum to really go through the organization and get everybody buy in, become critical. Because honestly, it will be very frustrating that like we put up a huge, big change program, but you never see the result for the next 6 months. So I think along the line with just like it's like how we can really have the right mindset together with like the right communications in order to get people to buy into change, given all the changes around the world.
Your comment around change. Humans are not hardwired for change. Imagine if I told you lunch is going to be delayed by 5 minutes. You know, my whole calendar is like, I don't know what to do, right? Is how do we kind of acknowledge that, recognize that? You said communication and the over communication. I saw you moving your mic, so you want to share something, I think.
Yeah, I think to supplement on the human front, I think having a learning agility mindset in the organization is super important. And to that, I think we definitely need to provide that psychological safety for people to try out new things and recognizing that not everything is always going to be rosy every day, but that's okay. And that's what I think as a leader and as an organization, you need to offer that safety for your employees so that people are willing to speak out and they're willing to speak up and try new things and learn and continue that test and learn momentum. And I think secondly, it's also recognizing that nobody can do anything now alone by themselves anymore, not even the biggest organizations in the world. And so it's really then being able to tap into different partnerships and creating that virtual ecosystems where perhaps be it distribution, perhaps be it product manufacturing, and being able to bring all of those skill sets and strengths together so that you can create that integrated customer experience where customers' expectations continue to rise. And so you need to offer that whole end-to-end seamless journey in an integrated manner. And that's where you can really help to service customers that are cross-border, they travel, they're very mobile. So you need that ecosystem to help you to continue to sustain and thrive.
Yeah, more interconnected than ever, and you know, in less obvious ways as well. So, Jacqueline, I would love to make this a little bit more personal. So maybe you can take the conversation to you as a leader. How has your leadership evolved and shifted in this much more dynamic, complex, and interconnected world that we're in?
Sure, thank you. I've been quite fortunate to actually evolve my leadership given the various companies I've worked at. So I started out in investment banking and consulting, so doing advisory work for top institutions. Then moved on to working at an Asian-based conglomerate, Jardine Matheson, that has diverse businesses operating across many markets here in Asia. And now here at Hong Kong Land, which is a real estate investor, manager, and developer. And what I would say is my leadership approach has evolved in the sense that I spend a lot more of my time being what I call the glue and the oil. The glue meaning you're bringing the right sets of people together in a room to talk, so the human connection, but also then being the oil, helping to figure out how do you de-bottleneck things so that we can get stuff done faster and more successfully. Right? And so I adopted a group of rather disparate functions at Hong Kong Land. If you think about it, sustainability, technology, comms, branding, right? CSR, strategic placemaking. And so a lot of my time has been spent actually trying to figure out how do you get these teams to see that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, that actually you can see the intersections of where you could work together, right, to do more together.
I love the analogy. I'm going to steal that. I will give you credit for it, glue and oil. And isn't that the definition of COO, is if it doesn't fit somewhere in an organization, the COO can take care of it. They're going to get things done and they're going to move things forward. I'd love to go to Terrence next and get your perspective on this question. And then I got a different direction that I'm going to take Carrie and Trevor in. So fair warning for you. But Terrence, your leadership, how has it evolved and shifted?
I think it would absolutely be a much more open mind towards cultural nuances, for sure. Like I grew up also primarily on the institutional side of a bank in Toronto and then in New York, and it's quite homogenous, right? How bankers and sales and traders talk about a problem, solve a problem, it's almost always blunt force trauma and like, let's go, let's go, let's go. And there's a, yeah, that's right. And having only moved to Asia, coming up on 7 years, there's an art to it, right? And listening and really hearing some of the cues to figure out, okay, what might be really going on requires a lot of listening, right? Just a very open mind towards hearing kind of what's going on. And I think Brian and I had a quick email exchange. In Canada, for those who have spent most of the time there, I often hear, oh yeah, Asia, as if it's just one blob, like it's one country for some reason. But all the different markets within is also quite different, right? Not just in terms of culture, but you know, the lineage and the background of each of these specific markets, the regulatory landscapes, they're all quite uniquely different. Sure, there's commonalities. And so how have I been able to adapt and actually, again, really intently listen and figure out kind of what's being said to me so that I can, you know, add liquidity to processes, you know, oil or glue where appropriate.
You teed this one up perfectly in recognizing, yeah, we can't sort of group everything together. There's so many nuances. We sort of see the opposite version of that in Canada. It's more from a geographic standpoint, right? It's like, oh, I'm going to Canada. It's like, well, where are you going in Canada? We need to be a little bit more specific because, you know, we've got a lot of time zones, we've got a lot of hours. And you probably can't drive if you think you're going to be driving between, you know, your meeting in Toronto and your meeting that afternoon in Vancouver. It's not going to work. So we had some conversations leading up to this, both Carrie and Trevor. So one of you can jump on this one first, is challenges of working across multiple markets and having teams across multiple markets. So build on kind of what we just we're circling around, and what are some of the nuances you're seeing, and where do you treat it the same? Where do you not treat it the same?
All right, maybe I'll start first. I know there's always that cliche around Asia being a one single market, right? But you know, effectively, it's really a mosaic, I would say, of different customer preferences, different regulatory regimes, and different health ecosystems. And there's always kind of that fine balance of trying to find regional consistency and balancing that against, I would say, local hyper-relevance. And you need both of that to be able to operate effectively in a market. So I would say sometimes the sweet spots would be just making sure that you embrace and understand the cultural intelligence, the heritage behind it, and also definitely empower your local markets because they are always the ones that are closest to the front line. And also having programs where you encourage companies and their employees where they can be cross functions, mobility. There is also mobility of moving across geographies, because I think diverse perspectives are definitely now much more encouraged and they should be embraced. And I myself have been a beneficiary of that, going into strategy, starting out in the regional office in a strategy remit, and then moving into the local BU and taking up operations. And that really just lends yourself to a whole new lens and understanding of what it means to operate at the local level. So it's really kind of finding that sweet spot and continue to move people around so that we continue to gather different insights and offer new perspectives.
I love the word perspective and you know, eye-opening, you know, lots of listening, lots of learning, lots of understanding the nuances, and that idea of mosaic, right? It's not necessarily a hard and fast line. It often has a little bit more nuance and blending between. Trevor, tell us, you travel a lot, so you've got a lot of views here.
Actually, I also come from investment banking background. I spent 20 years in investment bank before I
You
moved.
don't have to apologize.
And,
That's
and,
okay.
and the reason why I said is, I actually, what Terence just mentioned about echo me a lot, because it's very homogeneous and like everyone speaks perfect English. Now I struggle when I manage 11 countries with Thailand, Indonesia, Vietnam, Japan, Korea. I struggle because not everyone speak perfect English. It's not they don't try. It's not that they don't speak enough. But as I say, they don't speak English. I don't speak perfect English as well, just be clear. But what I'm trying to say is, like, the way that they express their English are actually very subject to very different interpretations of the meaning, I just realized. So when I work with multi-country over the last 3.5 years, that I come from very different, I would call it economic level, and the way that the English level differs, I try to be a bit more patient, to really have more empathetic perspective of what exactly they mean. Can't move as quickly I would like to move. And I try to learn to adapt such a way that like we find a common understanding of the language in order to get the team buy-in to move forward. So I think it's just a bit of the multicultural, which I know the Canada kind of like classic policy and how to employ into my day-to-day.
Sidebar, I had to tell a funny story. So our head of Thailand, my Thai market head, told me recently that my English accent is very difficult to understand. And my initial reaction was like, wait, what? I'd never encountered that in my life. My English accent is difficult to understand. But then it took a moment to pause and be like, okay, I get it, right? And so I spoke a little bit slower and just I made a point to enunciate the consonants and everything else. But I tell you, that was a what?
I love it, right? And that patience. I got to slow down a little bit. I got to enunciate. Maybe I'm talking a little bit too fast. Maybe the words and the actions are not aligning, or they mean something a little bit different. I heard a saying a while ago that really stuck with me. I can't attribute it because I forget who actually said it, but creating the whole that is greater than the sum of the parts. And we hear lots of different parts. And how do I not just treat this as something distinct and something here is distinct, and creating that sort of harmony? And it's often understanding, inviting more conversation, being easier to find that I'm actually understood in the conversation. I want to shift it back to the organization, and Jacqueline, I want to go to you first, because you're navigating some really interesting times, specifically right here in Hong Kong. So I'd love to hear about, it's an overused word, but we kind of all know what it means, when your organization has had to make a pivot or a change in direction. Whether it was rapidly, whether it was unexpected, whether it was there was a risk or there was an opportunity that you wanted to capitalize on. But how did you, in a COO role, sort of mobilize around a shift that your organization had to make?
Let me know if you don't understand my Australian English. So I spoke earlier about the shift in the market here that we're seeing from space to experience, right? And that's really the voice of the customer speaking. Leading financial institutions, businesses, and the talent is asking for it. And so I established a new team within Hong Kong Land called the Strategic Placemaking Team. And so you ask, well, what does that do? Essentially, its focus is on going beyond the four walls, as I describe it. So going beyond the four walls of the 12 interconnected buildings that Hong Kong Land has had for the last 137 years here in Central. And really wearing not the landlord hat, but actually a civic stewardship hat, right? And actually looking at spaces we don't own, the nooks and crannies between buildings, shared spaces, oftentimes government-owned spaces, and thinking, well, what could we do to elevate the experience of these spaces? Not just for our tenants, they're very important and they do demand it, because the sort of the blurring between private space and public space post-COVID, I think everyone will agree, you do want to go out and, you know, get vitamin D. And I'll be the first to admit, if you walk around Central afterwards to try to get over jet lag, you will be hard pressed to find public furniture in the public realm, right? And so this idea of creating spaces that the public can use, visitors can come and see, and to increase dwell time, to people watch, to enjoy a little bit of sort of space in this space-constrained city. And so we set up this team. It's a really bootstrap team, so that's the first thing you ask. So how do you make these strategic pivots? You sort of work with what you get, or what you have, right? So it was pulling a couple of people from different parts of the business who were interested, excited, passionate to do something new, and then taking very much a test and learn approach, so piloting. We did 2 major pilot activations last year in the public realm here in Central. Those of you who live here in Central will know that Chater Road is pedestrianised on Sundays. We took up 13 Sundays over the summer. We activated it, put 2 pickleball courts out there, had a corporate challenge, live music, F&B, and it was really well received. And then the second pilot activation was the first ever partnership with Hong Kong Tourism Board last December, where we brought the focus of Christmas back into Central with Winter Wonderland in Central. I think for those of you who were around, I think you would have been hard-pressed to miss it. 1.4 million visitors over 6 weeks and 600 million plus impressions across major media outlets. So, you know, these were pilot activations. What it did was, one, showcase within the business that actually there's a blueprint that we can follow that works, that has demand and is catering to the public. But 2, more importantly, is getting public sector, government to actually see that these pilots work, and maybe, you know, we might be able to expand a little bit more opportunity to the private sector to do more here in Central.
Amazing. I was one of those 1.4 million. Maybe I was the 1.4 million that just put you over the edge, but it was great to be here and to have that kind of experience. So this is my warning. I'm coming over to this side of the room after my next question, so I expect a real doozy from somebody over here that you're going to throw to one of our panelists, or ideally a question that multiple of them can jump on. So leadership, attracting, retaining, developing talent. I'd love to hear some tips. You know, maybe it's something that you were struggling with and you found a way through. Maybe it's something that's working really well in your organization, but how are you getting and keeping the best of the best right now?
Let me start. I think everyone has different style, right? And for me, I try to be as authentic as I can be. I talk to them the way. Let me share the story with you. Like the other day, my assistant come have a quick chat, reviewing my schedule, and then actually just after my conversations with my regional CEO, and she just listened to what we said, and first thing he's like, Trev, you said exactly the same way, just talk to me and the others, but I'm the same person. Why I should be different? So what I try to share is for me, I just try to be myself day in and day out, to be consistent. I think colleagues like to see the human beings as the colleague. I think colleagues like to see the true side of yourself day in and day out, the same person. That's at least my experience, and I found it works for me. And I continue to practice, and actually I found it easier for me as well.
Carrie, we know that Manulife is a big employer in the region. We heard about that this morning. Tips?
I think a couple of things, right? Firstly, you need to continue to offer upskills and training for your staff. I think that's pretty much now hygiene, and people, you want to make sure that they've got the right capabilities and literacy when it comes to digital analytics and transformation. But I think what is really, really important is really centering the employee proposition and your business strategy around purpose. Because ultimately, people really want to make a long-term impact, and they want to feel that tangible, what they do on an everyday basis actually contribute to the overall business well-being. And so you need to make sure that that is really grounded, because that's what's going to drive people longer term. And of course, I think Hong Kong has a really great talent environment. The government, with schemes like TTPS, QMAS, it's really brought a lot of high caliber professions into the industry. And we certainly, very much welcome that. But I think at an individual level, it's always going to be the culture, the growth, and the leadership. That's what's going to drive, attract, and obviously retain the great talent that we have.
I would just add one thing, which is feedback. I think developing and retaining top talent, feedback is oftentimes a really underutilized tool. So I try to spend time giving regular, frequent feedback. When was the last time you spoke to someone that reports to you about how they are doing and giving very specific feedback? And it's always been a gift. It's helped me identify my blind spots. It's also helped me accelerate my strengths. And so finding the time as a leader, as a manager, to do that with your direct reports, I think is really an important differentiator, because people leave because of bad managers, but they will also stay because of great ones.
And then I'll take the feedback and flip it the other way around as well. So I gather feedback from those who are in my team, right, around my team. Like, is there anything that they need more out of me, less out of me? Is there something that maybe I'm missing? Is there anything that you're seeing within your respective circles? And most of these will be earlier in their careers. And so they're going to be tapped into a different kind of network, and they're going to be much more familiar with a different kind of tech reality, right? And so I need to be actively seeking feedback from them to make sure that I'm also moving the needle and upping my game and gaining larger awareness to things that I frankly am not aware of, right? And so the hypothesis is whatever that I've done so far in my career that may have garnered some success for me, it's definitely not going to be how it's going to keep me there or make me even more so in the future. And so I need this constant kind of feedback loop where I'm continually learning as well.
Yeah, create that space where people feel comfortable giving feedback, give them permission, invite it. Huge tips. Anyone here ever done a 360 at some point in their career? I'll put my hand up.
Yeah.
They're great when they're formal tools, but we can do it informally, very casually, all the time. Hello. Question time. All right. 1 and then 2. I'll give you 2 because you're both ready. That's awesome. And then we'll see if we have a time for one over here. The clock is challenging to see, but it's not flashing and I got time. So, okay. I like that tip. Okay. I'm still going to questions here. So number 1 and number 2. Do we have a microphone to make it easy? Or I'll repeat it if anyone can. Go for it. Oh, wait, here we go. Oh, are you ringing a microphone? Wonderful.
All right. Given you all come from large corporate organizations that inherently would have a lot of processes and traditionalized ways of doing business and expectations of how business should work, how do you intersect with the entrepreneurs who are innovating? Because you have a room with a lot of entrepreneurs who are looking at you saying, how do I do business with you? How do I bring my innovation to you? So how are you intersecting from that large corporate world to the entrepreneurial innovation world?
What a great question. I saw Carrie and then Terrence, went for the mic. So you go first, Carrie.
I think firstly is recognizing, right, that even as a large corporation, you can't do everything yourself and you can't do everything alone. And it's really having that mindset and to be able to embrace new companies or entrepreneurial companies that are maybe dabbling into the field of healthcare, particularly, for example, we talked about longevity. And so there's now a greater importance in doing a lot of preventive measures and what we can do to help people stay healthier. And so, for example, with Manulife, we've got the Manulife Move, right? And it's about, helping people do more steps, do more activities to keep them healthy. And we work with a lot of different companies to bring that wholesome proposition forward to really encourage and empower people to lead healthier lifestyles. So I think that's one example of things that we're doing and reaching out to different companies. But it's also platforms like this where we get to network and meet one another and share different practices and see if there is collaboration opportunities that we can take further.
Terrence, you want to tackle it? Then I'll go back and say, did you get a sufficient answer to your question? We don't often do that where we close the loop with the person who asked the question. So
Yeah,
lots of pressure.
So, yeah, I came from a 150-year-old bank, 100,000 people around the world, to now a 10-year-old company, handful of shareholders, primarily family-run. And so that owner-operator mindset is much more pronounced, right, in the shop that I am in now. And so I think to answer your question, how it's understanding that for the entrepreneur, that business is everything. Like it is their baby, right? They've put everything into it. And so if I narrow it down to kind of my own life, still COO at home, not the CEO. But what does it actually mean when I make certain decisions that impact the finances or logistics, right? And having that understanding and then figuring out and speaking with partners in the ecosystem that are also entrepreneurs, knowing that their motivations are much more personal, then how do I complement what their needs are and maybe deliver a value-add service that will actually be helpful versus, in a corporate world, if I were to potentially work with a partner, you go through the third-party supplier management assessment, and you go through risk analysis, and you go through, a request for proposals, and it's on and on and on, and it may take comfortably 6 months before a decision is made before signing up a new vendor. Versus here, I'll get it done in a week, right? And knowing that time is definitely of the essence.
Good.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
And to think about how to use their procurement policies to not make it a 6-month process that becomes very cumbersome, but to think about what you can do with your local entrepreneurs to ensure that their innovation's actually getting elevated and that they can grow inside of their own country.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Amazing. All right, we had a question back there. I'm going to make the mic run really quick. And then we'll do one more, and then we will wrap, right? Yeah.
Hi, everyone. Alex from CanCham Pearl River Delta. Brian, I've been doodly scrolling here, trying to, or scribing, I should say, to try and get a doozy for you. So let's see. Assuming tech and geopolitics are the table stakes, let's say, for the next wave of change and growth, I wanted to know what's the one overlooked shift that we maybe didn't identify today that if we were here 10 years from now, we'd be looking back saying, shit, we missed that one.
Not bad. No one's flinching yet.
Wait, sorry, the one overlooked what?
So there's a lot of conversation around AI, culture, POTUS, geopolitics. So my question is, these are some things that I think we hear a lot about. So when you're thinking about these things, if we were to reflect 10 years looking back, what is something that nobody's talking about that you think is kind of the dark horse? So there's some clarification.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't work for a big corporation anymore, so I don't have corporate comms to mute me. That the potential of conflict is real, right? I don't want to get into a whole doomsday scenario, but how are we either hedging for it or anticipating it in a way where we need to navigate our respective businesses to kind of mitigate that risk, right? 10 years from now, like if we don't take it at least somewhat seriously that it could be a reality, then if and when it happens, look, hopefully it never does, but if and when it does, if we're not prepared, then something else will certainly happen respective to our businesses or the reality of what we live in. But that conflict is potentially there.
I would just like to, sorry, I would like just to add on is regarding conflict. I think it's not that we don't talk about, I don't think that we don't talk about enough. Is I think a lot of instability that I think we observe because of a lot of disparity. And for the business development and stability is crucial. So I think the social unrest also stem from all this kind of like disparity and all this and cause social unrest around the world. And I don't think that that's being kind of like being addressed and looked into enough, quite honestly.
Thank you for tackling those. I got the very eloquent Madeline. You can get away with it. The wrap up, and I just want to conclude with a sincere thanks. Trevor, Terrence, Jacqueline, Carrie. I was excited going into this because of our prep conversations. You all have phenomenal roles, big mandates, and are operating in a really exciting time. And you exceeded my expectations in terms of the examples that you brought. Hopefully the crowd here feels that you got a few tangible takeaways and some stories that are memorable. But I thank you all for your active participation. I know a few of you have to catch planes and run back to offices, but if anyone has a question you didn't get to, catch them by the door when they run out. But thank you for participating.